When fire meets fortune, the diner's neon sign flickered against the darkening Seattle sky, casting intermittent shadows across the cracked linoleum floor. Sarah wiped down the counter for what felt like the 1,000th time that evening, her hands raw from years of scrubbing, serving, and surviving. At 28, she looked older than her years, the weight of responsibility etched into the fine lines around her eyes. Her blonde hair, once meticulously styled, now fell in tired waves around her shoulders, pulled back with a cheap elastic band that had seen better days. The bell above the door chimed, and Sarah looked up, ready to paste on her practiced smile. But the man who walked in wasn't like the usual customers who frequented Millie's diner at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night. He wore a suit that probably cost more than she made in 6 months, charcoal gray with subtle pinstripes that caught the light. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his jaw sharp enough to cut glass, and his eyes, those piercing brown eyes, swept across the diner with an expression somewhere between disdain and desperate curiosity. "We're about to close," Sarah said, her voice flat with exhaustion. "I can see that," the man replied, his voice smooth and cultured. "But I was hoping you might make an exception. I'm willing to pay extra." Of course he was. Men like him always thought money could buy anything. Sarah felt a familiar anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. Anger didn't pay the bills. Anger didn't keep the lights on in her mother's hospital room. "Sit anywhere you like," she said, reaching for a menu. "But I need to warn you, we're out of most things. It's been a long day." The man chose a booth by the window, sliding into the red vinyl seat with practiced grace. Sarah noticed he didn't even glance at the menu sheet placed in front of him. "Just coffee," he said. "Black, and maybe some conversation, if you're willing." Sarah's guard went up immediately. "I'm a waitress, not a therapist. I'll pay $100 for the coffee and 10 minutes of your time." She stared at him, searching for the catch. There was always a catch with people like him. But behind his polished exterior, she saw something unexpected, a deep, bone-weary sadness that mirrored her own. "Make it 200 and you've got yourself a deal," she heard herself say, immediately regretting it. But he was already pulling out his wallet, placing crisp bills on the table. Sarah poured 2 cups of coffee and sat down across from him, breaking every rule in her personal handbook. But something about this stranger, this obvious millionaire slumming it in her world, intrigued her despite her better judgment. "I'm Marcus," he said, extending his hand. Sarah. She shook it briefly, noting how soft his hands were compared to her calloused ones. "So what's a guy like you doing in a place like this?" "Lose a bet." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Something like that. Actually, I was driving around, trying to avoid going home. Saw your sign and thought, why not? I haven't been in a place like this since I was a kid." "Must be nice," Sarah said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "Having the luxury to avoid your home. Some of us would kill for a home worth avoiding." Instead of taking offense, Marcus studied her with those intense eyes. "You're right. That was privileged of me. Tell me, Sarah who works at Millie's diner, what's your story?" "My story?" She laughed harshly. "My story is boring. Single mom, dead-end job, mother with stage 4 cancer, and medical bills that would make your head spin. Pretty standard American dream, right? You have a child, Emily. She's 7. Smartest kid you'd ever meet. Loves to read, wants to be a veterinarian. Sarah's voice softened when she talked about her daughter. She's with my neighbor right now, probably already asleep. Mrs. Chen watches her when I work late shifts. And Emily's father, gone, left when she was 2 months old. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. Sarah took a sip of her coffee, surprised to find herself opening up to this stranger. Turns out he wasn't ready to be a decent human being either. Marcus nodded slowly. My father left too. Different circumstances, but I understand that particular brand of abandonment. Somehow I doubt your circumstances were anything like mine, Sarah said. But there was less edge to her voice now. You'd be surprised. Marcus stared into his coffee as if it held answers. My father was Richard Caldwell. Maybe you've heard of him. Caldwell Industries. Sarah had heard of him. Everyone had. One of the richest men in America. Died 6 months ago in a scandal that had dominated the news cycle for weeks. So you're that Marcus Caldwell, she said quietly. The one who inherited everything. The one who inherited everything except a father who gave a damn, Marcus corrected. He had 3 families, Sarah. 3 separate lives running simultaneously. My mother was wife number 2. Though she didn't know about wife number 1 or wife number 3 until he died. The lawyers are still sorting through the mess. That's why you're driving around at 9 p.m., avoiding your home. That's why, he confirmed. Today was supposed to be my wedding day. Vanessa, my fiancée, my ex-fiancée, decided that the legal complications and media circus weren't worth dealing with. She left 2 weeks ago. Sent a text message. A text message, after 5 years together. Sarah felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm starting to realize she loved the idea of being Mrs. Marcus Caldwell more than she ever loved me. Maybe I should thank her for having the decency to leave before we made it official. They sat in silence for a moment, 2 wounded people finding unexpected common ground in a dying diner in Seattle. Your 10 minutes are almost up, Sarah said finally, though neither of them moved. Can I buy another 10 minutes? Marcus asked. Another 200. You don't have to pay me to talk to you. I know. But you need the money, and I need the company. Seems like a fair exchange. Sarah wanted to be offended, but he was right. She did need the money. Desperately. Fine. But I need to start closing up while we talk. Marcus followed her as she moved through the diner, wiping tables and stacking chairs. He talked about his life. The empty mansion he called home, the company he'd inherited that he had no idea how to run, the friends who turned out to be anything but when the scandal broke. Sarah listened and shared her own stories. The mother who'd raised her alone after her father died in a construction accident, the scholarships she'd lost when she got pregnant, the dreams she'd put on hold and might never reclaim. What did you want to be? Marcus asked. Before Emily. A chef. Not just a cook, but a real chef. I had a scholarship to culinary school in New York. Full ride. It was going to be my ticket out of here. Sarah's voice was wistful. But then Emily happened, and Mom got sick, and well, here I am, slinging hash in the same diner where I worked in high school. Do you regret it, having Emily? Never, Sarah said fiercely. Emily is the best thing that ever happened to me. But do I regret how things turned out? Every single day, Marcus picked up a rag and started helping her wipe down tables without being asked. The gesture was so unexpected that Sarah stopped and stared. "What? I may be rich, but I'm not completely useless," he said with a hint of a smile. "I spent my summers in college working at a restaurant. My father said I needed to understand what real work was like before I joined the company. Did it work? I loved it. Every minute of it. Almost quit college to stay in the kitchen." Marcus's expression grew distant. "But my father had other plans. He always had other plans." They finished closing the diner together, moving with an easy rhythm that felt oddly natural. When Sarah finally locked the door behind them, it was nearly midnight. "Thank you," Marcus said simply. "For the coffee and the conversation." "Thank you for the $400, Sarah replied, patting her pocket where the bills rested. "That's 2 months of Emily's after-school program." Marcus pulled out his wallet again, but Sarah held up her hand. "Don't. I'm not a charity case." "I know you're not, but what if I had a proposition for you?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "I'm not that kind of girl." "Not that kind of proposition," Marcus said quickly, his face flushing. "A business proposition. You need money. I need someone real in my life. Someone who isn't interested in the Caldwell fortune or the Caldwell name." "You want to hire me to be your friend?" Sarah asked incredulously. "I want to hire you to be my chef. Private chef. You said you wanted to go to culinary school, to be a real chef. I have a kitchen that's never been used. I'll pay you more than you make here, give you health insurance, cover your mother's medical bills. In return, you cook for me. Teach me what real food tastes like again." Sarah's heart raced. It was too good to be true. It had to be. "Why would you do this?" "Because I'm drowning, Sarah. I'm drowning in my father's mess, in a life I never wanted, surrounded by people I can't trust. And tonight, for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Because of you. Because you treated me like a person, not a checkbook or a scandal or a prize to be won. I don't know anything about being a private chef for a millionaire. Billionaire, actually. But who's counting?" Marcus smiled ruefully. "And I don't want millionaire food. I want real food. Comfort food. The kind of food that makes you remember what it's like to be human." Sarah thought about Emily, about the medical bills stacked on her kitchen table, about her mother's latest doctor's report. She thought about Mrs. Chen, who watched Emily out of kindness but was getting too old for the responsibility. She thought about her dreams, boxed up and stored away like Christmas decorations, gathering dust in the attic of her mind. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Of course. Take my number. Call me when you decide." Marcus handed her a business card. "No pressure." "But Sarah, I meant what I said. About covering your mother's bills. Whether you take the job or not, let me do that. Call it a thank you for tonight." "I can't accept that." "Yes, you can. And you will. Because pride doesn't cure cancer, and your mother deserves the best care possible." Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. "I have more money than I know what to do with. Let me do something good with it. Please." Sarah's eyes filled with tears for the first time in years. She'd been so strong for so long, carrying the weight of her world on her shoulders, never asking for help, never accepting it when offered. But she was tired. So incredibly tired. Okay. She whispered. Okay. Marcus gave her his number and made her promise to call the next day, then waited by his car. A sleek silver something that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. Until she drove away in her 15-year-old Honda that made concerning sounds whenever she turned left. That night, Sarah lay in her bed, unable to sleep, turning Marcus's card over and over in her hands. Emily was curled up beside her, small and warm and perfect. In the apartment above, she could hear the Rodriguez family arguing in Spanish. Next door, someone was playing music too loud. This was her life. This tiny apartment with the leaky faucet and the heater that only worked sometimes. This was the life she'd built from nothing, piece by painstaking piece. Could she really walk away from it? Could she really trust a stranger who'd appeared in her diner like some kind of fairy godmother in an expensive suit? But then she thought about her mother, growing frailer every day in that hospital bed. She thought about Emily's worn shoes, 2 sizes too small because new ones weren't in the budget. She thought about the dreams she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten they existed. The next morning, Sarah called the number on the card. Marcus answered on the first ring, as if he'd been waiting. "I'll do it," she said. "But I have conditions. Emily comes with me. I need live-in arrangements, a separate space for us. And I want it in writing. All of it. The salary, the health insurance, the coverage of my mother's bills. I'm not going to be dependent on verbal promises. Done. All of it. My lawyer will draw up a contract. Can you start next week?" It happened so fast it made Sarah's head spin. One day she was serving coffee in a dying diner, the next she was signing a contract that would pay her more money than she'd seen in her entire life. The contract was generous to the point of being absurd. A salary that would let her save for Emily's college, health insurance that covered everything, and a separate guest house on Marcus's property that she and Emily could call home. Mrs. Chen cried when Sarah told her, happy tears mixed with sadness at losing her favorite little visitor. Her boss at the diner, old Mike, grumbled but wished her well, telling her she was too good for this place anyway. Her mother, in her hospital bed, held Sarah's hand with what little strength she had left. "Take the chance, baby," she whispered. "Take it and don't look back. I'm proud of you." Moving day arrived wrapped in spring sunshine and possibilities. Marcus's house, no, mansion, was in the hills overlooking Seattle, all glass and modern architecture that seemed to float above the city. The guest house was bigger than any place Sarah had ever lived, with 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and windows that overlooked a garden that looked like something from a magazine. Emily ran through the rooms with squeals of delight, claiming the bedroom with the window seat as her own. Sarah stood in the middle of her new home, trying to process that this was real, that this was happening. Marcus appeared at the door, looking nervous. "Is it okay if you need anything changed?" "It's perfect," Sarah said, and meant it. "Thank you for all of this. Thank you for saying yes. I've had the main kitchen stocked with everything I thought you might need, but obviously add anything I missed. Your first official duty is tomorrow, breakfast at 8. But tonight, just settle in. Make yourselves at home." The first few days were awkward. Sarah felt like an imposter in the gleaming kitchen with its professional-grade appliances and endless drawer space. She made simple meals, pancakes for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for dinner. Marcus ate everything like it was the finest cuisine, praising her cooking with an enthusiasm that seemed genuine. Emily adapted quickly, as children do. She explored the garden, made friends with Marcus's ancient housekeeper Martha, and started treating the mansion like an adventure playground. Sarah watched her daughter bloom in this new environment, guilt and gratitude warring in her chest. It was on the fourth night that everything changed. Sarah was preparing dinner. Nothing fancy, just chicken and roasted vegetables, when Marcus appeared in the kitchen doorway. He looked different, his hair disheveled, his tie loosened, his eyes red-rimmed. "My mother's attorney called," he said without preamble. "There's a fourth family, a fourth wife, hidden away in Portland. And she has a son. A son who's contesting the will, claiming he's the rightful heir." Sarah turned off the stove and guided Marcus to a chair. "Sit down. I'll make tea." "I don't want tea. I want—" He stopped, looking lost. "I don't know what I want." "Then tea it is," Sarah said firmly, filling the kettle. "And you're going to talk about it. All of it. Because that's what friends do." "Are we friends?" Marcus looked up at her with an expression so vulnerable it made her heart ache. "We're getting there," Sarah said softly. And so Marcus talked. He talked about his father's betrayals, about the weight of expectations he never asked for, about the empire he was supposed to run when he had no idea what he was doing. He talked about feeling like a fraud, like he was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Sarah listened, and when he was done, she poured the tea and sat down across from him. "You want to know what I think?" she asked. "Please. I think you're so focused on being who you think you're supposed to be that you've forgotten who you actually are. I think you're letting your father's ghost run your life, even though he doesn't deserve that power. And I think you need to stop trying to fix everything and start figuring out what you actually want." Marcus stared at her. "That's remarkably direct. You hired me to be real with you. I'm being real. What do I want?" Marcus repeated, as if trying out the words. "I haven't asked myself that in years." "Then maybe it's time to start." Over the following weeks, Sarah and Marcus fell into a routine that felt less like employer and employee and more like something she couldn't quite name. She cooked. He ate and praised her food with genuine appreciation. They talked about everything and nothing, about dreams deferred and futures uncertain. Emily charmed Marcus completely, dragging him into tea parties and story time with the unconscious confidence of a child who'd never learned to doubt her worth. Sarah's mother was transferred to a better facility, where she received treatment that actually seemed to be helping. The relief of not lying awake at night worrying about medical bills was almost overwhelming. Sarah found herself crying at odd moments, while chopping vegetables or folding laundry, releasing years of accumulated stress. One evening, Marcus appeared in the kitchen with a package. "Open it," he said, practically vibrating with excitement. Inside was an acceptance letter from one of the most prestigious culinary schools in the country, along with paperwork showing he'd arranged for her to attend classes online while continuing to work for him. "Marcus, I can't." "Yes, you can. You said you wanted to be a chef. So be one. Be the best one. I'll work my schedule around your classes." Emily's settled into her new school. Martha loves watching her when you need it. "This is happening, Sarah. You're going to culinary school." Sarah's hands shook as she held the acceptance letter. Why are you doing all this? Marcus stepped closer, his expression intense. Because you make me want to be better. Because when I'm around you and Emily, I remember what it's like to be happy. Because somewhere between the pancakes and the pasta, I fell completely, irrevocably in love with you. The silence stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Say something, Marcus whispered. I can't, Sarah said, her voice breaking. Marcus, look at us. Look at where we come from. This, whatever this is, it's not real. It's a fairy tale, and fairy tales don't exist. What if they do? What if we make them exist? You barely know me. I know you're brave. I know you're kind. I know you love your daughter with a fierceness that takes my breath away. I know that you see me, really see me, not my money or my name, but me. And I know that I've never felt this way about anyone in my entire life. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I'm terrified. Me too, Marcus admitted. But maybe that's how we know it's real. They stood there in the kitchen, the space between them crackling with tension and hope. Finally, Sarah closed the distance and kissed him, pouring years of loneliness and longing into that single moment of connection. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Marcus rested his forehead against hers. So what now? Now we take it slow, Sarah said. Now we figure this out together. Now we see if fairy tales can actually come true. And in that kitchen, with the smell of dinner still lingering in the air and the promise of tomorrow stretching before them, two broken people began the work of making each other whole. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be media scrutiny when their relationship became public. There would be legal battles over Marcus's inheritance. There would be adjustments and arguments and moments of doubt. But there would also be love, messy, complicated, beautiful love. The kind of love that transforms ordinary moments into magic, that turns a chance meeting in a diner into a lifetime of possibilities. Sometimes the brave cook really does conquer the millionaire. Not with a spatula or a perfect soufflé, but with something far more powerful, the courage to risk their heart and the wisdom to believe that everyone, no matter where they come from, deserves a second chance at happiness.